Michael Marrero and Julio Trinidad. Welcome to Token Theater, friends. I'm very happy to have both of you here today. So can you tell our audience what Repair is all about? And Julio, who do you play in it?
Well, I co-wrote it, and I play the driver in Repair. And Repair is about two individuals in one location struggling to not kill each other. It's more to that, but it's a what if scenario, and it begins with a driver going into a mechanic shop and shooting the mechanic, and that's where we start. And from then on, things unravel itself, and yeah, I don't want to give too much away. I want the people to see it as well. So
yeah, one of the things when we started this project, I'm an artist at a place called the Studios in Key West, and they were doing this streaming platform of plays. So we did a read in Key West for Repair, and literally it was March 2020. So we did the read, and it was supposed to do a second read, and then the world collapsed and went to shit in that week, basically. So we had a lot of time on our hands, so we kind of rewrote it, and then the organization came to us about would be interested in filming it and streaming it. So we're like, yeah, of course. So we kind of put that together, and one of the most unique parts of the project is we shot this on location in Corona, Queens, in a neighborhood that's deep Corona, and Julio could talk to a little bit more as where Julio's from. It was an opportunity for people who don't normally get to experience theater to see theater. So we shot it live in front of a very non-traditional theater audience in a Dominican-owned garage in Corona. And it was crazy. There were moments, it was challenging and awesome. And we could talk a little bit more about the shooting specifically when we get to that, but it was a trip. Julio, I don't know if you want to talk about the neighborhood a little.
Yeah, it was just as Mike said, it was this layered cake. We just didn't want to write a piece. We also wanted to showcase it in a very unique way. So we have ourselves this film play hybrid where we filmed it in a non-theatrical setting, so to speak. There's no lights. We had to rig the lights. We had to we got these group of locals to experience theater. Most of the people have never seen theater before, so that was a new experience. And yeah, it was deep in Corona, Queens. That's where I'm from, born and raised. And yeah, it was quite an experience, I have to say. So it's pretty cool.
Michael, you've spoken in other interviews about always wanting to do a New York story. So what does New York story mean to you?
Well, I'm from Key West, which is, there's a few of us actually born here, and I'm one of them. But theater in Key West, Key West used to be a lot more Spanish and ethnic and Cuban specifically. My family's from Cuba, and it's gotten gentrified over the years. It is much more upper East Coast now. They all come down with sweaters and they got the shit, and they come down. They're great supporters of the art, can't take that away. But and they support local theater, but what they mainly want to see is a happy story. They always want to see Jimmy Buffett playing the fucking guitar and doing the coconuts and all that type of shit. And I always wanted to do something more urban, because I've done plays about Key West, but it's Key West. It's a small audience, it's very specific. So I always was fascinated with New York, and that's where theater is in America, and at least primarily. So I always wanted to try a New York story. And Julio being from New York, and we worked together on multiple projects before, it felt like try something a little bit more urban, more dirty, more gritty, more try to write a tragedy as opposed to a comedy, and explore that genre. So that was kind of our aim with Repair.
This is such a great two-hander. And Julio, like you seem so much nicer than your character, and like not as let's say not as, I don't know, drastic. So how do you access a how do you how do you act as a character that has so many dark traits, like someone who uses violence and doesn't really seem to want to, but seems to be like for this man, violence seems to be the only path that life has kind of like carved for him. Like it seems like the only path that life has allowed him to walk down on. So how do you enter a character like that?
I think that's a good question. I think mostly it was all in the writing for us. It was we just wanted to be as truthful as possible and just follow that through line. So whatever was, whatever arose through those those words, we wanted to just live it in the moment. And Mike and I just wanted to be as truthful as possible. And yeah.
Also, yeah. So we're writing the story. It was all about these escalating situations. Julio had came with this. Don't want to give away what it's about specifically. Like the twist, but he came with it, and I was like, all right, what if this happens to somebody? And then it goes to here, then it goes to here, and it goes to here, and it keeps on spiraling up. And trying to put yourself in that situation of a father, what would you do in that situation? Especially the modern or the more old school approach to what it means to be a father, and how does that play out, in relation to the new definition of being a father, and what that means. So we're trying to explore that, masculinity, the cost of vengeance, the cost of violence. Are there other ways to move forward? And from a director standpoint, it was just fascinating to explore. It just keeps on escalating. Every time you think you got to figure out, a new twist comes, and like, oh, maybe he shouldn't have did that. Then like, oh, now I understand why. So constantly trying to seesaw between those two things, which I think Julio did a fantastic job, and he had fun exploring that with the character.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think it was important for us not to label our characters protagonists, antagonists, and have that flip happen throughout the play several times, because oftentimes we get stuck in this very almost commedia dell'arte set stock characters where we know who the villain is, we know who the hero is, and that's not reality. So in this situation, it's everyone sees themselves as the hero, and we wanted to explore that. And these two gentlemen essentially being two sides of the same coin, and how does that look? And we wanted the audience to leave with a sense of, who am I, the mechanic or the driver, or both, right? So that was a big part of our into this story as well, and also exploring the innate, the animal and man complex of one character entering an animal and the other one being a man, and how that flips in the story. And by animal, it's very guttural, very primal, void of logic kind of concept of something happens and you just go. And where does this, like Michael said, this upward spiral, where that took us was in this stew of I have to say, for myself, Mike is more accomplished writer than I am, but it was exhilarating writing these characters and exploring them, and the tug of war Mike and I having of Mike will come with a truth, and then I would come with a deeper truth, and Mike would come with the deeper truth. So it was this constant against the wall thing, which I love.
And like good old-fashioned practical levels, down to what snacks you brought to the writing sessions. What did the sessions look like? Because writing a play, it must be incredibly hard, and then just like collaborating with any human being is also like hard sometimes. So how did you negotiate like those different truths that you brought to the table? Like you mentioned Julio, and what did those sessions look like? Because I'm fascinated by, like, did you set up like we're gonna get together and write from this hour to this hour? Did you exchange emails or notes or phone calls or Zooms, I guess, once the pandemic started? Did you get together and just like drink beer and have pizza and figure out where the story was gonna go? Or how did this work out?
Well, I do like bourbon, so that helps. It greases the wheels. The first pass, we actually tried something. I've done a lot of collaborating before with other writers. We tried it where I would write a character and Julio would write the other character. So I would send one line of dialogue and he would respond with the next line. And then that didn't fucking work at all. Like we got like part of the way down. So then it became, we kind of outlined and brainstormed, and then, I would take a pass and then Julio would take a pass. And then we often would find something really funny. And all of a sudden the play would go from being a tragedy to a comedy. And then, and that would last for like a draft. And then we realized, well, shit, that don't work. And then you got to pull that out. So we had to check and balance, not even individually, we kind of had to check and balance ourselves because we often made ourselves laugh. And I will find earlier drafts were much more humorous, which didn't really work. So because we just start bantering with each other, we've known each other for so long, and then it starts escalating in this weird, funny way, and then we had to pull back. And then, not being in the same town. I mean, what do you think? Well, basically, it was just each of us taking a pass. Like, all right, I'll do scene 1, you do scene 2, and then we flip flop it, and he'll rewrite scene 1, and I'll rewrite scene 2, kind of.
I mean, it was, for me, it was completely a fruitful experience. It was a new experience for me. I've never written with someone else either. So Mike has more experience than I do with that. But because Mike is much more experienced, he was able to guide me a bit. Because I would come with a lot of ideas and, it's ham against the wall. And, for Mike and I think we just kept a checklist of, okay, what are we saying here? What are we trying to say? And some of our themes and topics, we stuck through them and stuck to them for most of our drafts. I mean, I think the gelling of the animal and man concept, the innate, the revenge, the what would you do scenario. I think all that stuck for the most part. And I mean, for myself, we did go back and forth a lot with monologues and stuff like that, which were great. We had characters go in and out throughout the scripts. But I think essentially, when we first wrote it, it didn't feel like a full length, which was very tricky. So we had this great idea, and how do you convert that into a full-length script? And that was the hardest part, because it felt like such a no-brainer. Okay, this person has to die now. And how do you drag that on in where it doesn't feel like it's being dragged? And that was something that was a bit tough, I'd say, is when something seems obvious and you have to work through that obvious and really kind of delegate the conversation almost. As sometimes the story is kind of revealing itself, but sometimes it stops and it says, this is as far as I can go. And that's when another writer is perfect, because two heads are better than one, and we're just chipping away at this wall, and then till we get to the other side, which I thought was great.
Yeah. The end process is always the hardest, when you're really just having to cut it down and cut all the fat out and take it down to its core. It'll make Julio panic sometimes. Go like, all right, we can take out these 10 pages, and it'll be like, it's all.
Yeah, Mike is much better at like, you write something you really, especially something you're proud of, and then it just doesn't make sense, as far as what the story is, and it's something that's inevitable and something that will happen. And sometimes it's some of the best work on the page, but it just doesn't make sense in the story. And you just gotta say la vie, you know. And Mike is way better than that than I am. I'll tell you that, because there's
Well, a
certain
lot of
moments where I'm like, please.
a lot of times, now that doesn't make sense in the story. It doesn't make sense to be in front of an audience. You know, when you're
Sure, yeah, yeah.
people are watching it and the pacing. If it was a
Mhm.
novel, it's much easier to keep all that in. But you know, with anything theatrical, it's all about pacing and holding the interest. So, you know, that person's not going to go get their second drink in the middle of a monologue, or it's just, you know, keeping people glued to their seats as much as you can.
Yeah. And to state the obvious, I think the pacing was one of those things that definitely revealed itself to us. I know Mike's work. I'm a fan of Mike's work. So the pacing was something that definitely had to rear its head later on, because we were writing, and you know, it's one of those I mean, I don't think it's one of those first things you find. Again, I'm not a writer like Mike is, but you know, my pace was all over the place, and it was just kind of finding the rhythm of the story, and then from there we were able to, okay, this no longer makes sense because of this pace. And so that's something that was a great learning curve for me, I would say.
I'm really curious, Julio, because like since you co-wrote the play, does this mean in any way that this character was, like kind of like you getting to play your own baby in a way? Like, were you a little bit more attached to this character? And did you love this character more than maybe you don't have to choose, you don't have to pick favorites, but were you a little bit more attached because of your direct personal connection to this character? And if so, how did this, have an effect on the way that you played him?
Well, it had effect in the way of backstory. I would say is the only effect it would have on me, as opposed to playing perhaps one of Mike's plays where you have to do a lot of the homework ahead of time. With this one, is I knew his whole backstory. There was a whole backstory, and it's something that Mike and I, and usually I'm doing the backstory by myself as an actor, but when you're in collaboration as a writer creating a character, you're creating the backstory together. So where he worked, and it's something that's never shown or talked about on the page, on the screen, but it's something that I know. And the relationship with his wife and all this kind of stuff. I don't have a favorite. I they're all a piece of you somehow, and you see a piece of yourself in everything you do. I guess I don't know if that's cliche, but that's how I approached it. The driver as much as mine as the mechanic is. We wrote them both with it's the same love, it's the story. So as far as relationship, I am nowhere near where the driver is. It's just I'm not like the driver at all. I'm very happy and go lucky. But that truth lives in me, it lives in Michael, and we hope it lives in other people where they can identify and say, okay, I identify with that. So it's just the identifying quality. That's the one that you take up and try to put on the page.
I can't think of that many productions in this, hybrid theater form that kind of, like fully blossomed after the pandemic started. But Michael, I'm very curious because you shot the film twice with an audience, and then you shot it the third time without an audience. So, as a writer of various mediums, Michael, how was it? How was the third version without an audience different from the two versions? Did you use the feedback that you got from gasps and laughter and, I don't know, audience reactions to do anything with that final audienceless version? Because the play itself is a combination of all three shoots, right?
Yeah. Normally with it first and foremost, Repair as a play, and then but I tried to shoot it like a film. So, if you watch it, you kind of get lost in it. It doesn't feel like you're watching. Because so many times when you see plays, film, they're very static. It's a classic 3 sitcom camera setup, medium, close up, wide. And, it just has that artificiality to it. So for this, like you said, we did it 3 times. Actually, because of a scheduling conflict, the second time was the one without the audience. So we did audience, no audience, audience. So for the no audience, I knew it wasn't even then about playing into what the actors or the moments. It was more the camera could then push in. Like all the cameras are handheld. So on the ones without the audience, I mean, they're right there. They're following the guy. They're right behind his shoulder. Something that would have been very hard to do with an audience because the camera had been blocking so much of action. So we really used that to get that very feeling of velocity and intimacy on that performance. We had the cameras, all three, right up, 1 foot away from the actor. And we still shot it straight through like a play. Like we weren't doing multiple takes of each scene. We didn't have time for that. So it really was just kind of grabbing it and going, each scene being one long take. Basically, it was exhausting. It was tough. I ran one of the cameras, and then we had 2 other cameramen, our DP and everything. So, we're talking like, I think scene 2 is the longest. It's like a 25-minute take that you're trying to capture, and and the cameras became almost like another actor. It really left it up to the cameraman and myself to see where it goes. Let the camera explore. If you see a moment, linger on a moment. If you want to move with them, and try to find that correlation as much as you can. They say, you write one piece, you shoot another, and then you edit a third. That definitely happened here. We wrote one thing and then we shot it, and it came out different than we thought, due to the garage and other factors. And then we edited a third version where we added score and all that. And it definitely, created all these different things.
As an audience member, for me, like sitting on my couch watching the play on my TV, like maybe I should say this to the 2 of you, but I should have said what I'm about to say, which is that I paused it after the mechanic offers the driver a drink, and I was like, I think I'm gonna need one as well. So I paused it, and I poured myself some whiskey, because the play, the camera made me feel like this was an immersive show. And like, if I had been in the audience, like I felt like I would have wanted to sit at the table with them and have a conversation with them as well. It had that urgency to it. And it made me think about how usually immersive shows tend to be a little bit more light, so to speak, and more, like musicals and comedies and I don't know, like dance and song kind of things. Well, with this, for some reason, like I don't know how to drive, so I don't think I've ever been an actual, I've never visited an actual mechanic for any reason. But I was like, this kind of seems like a cool place to hang out and like have a drink with them, and just like, maybe not mess with them, but just like hang and be with them. So I wonder, like shooting it as a film and it being a play, when you get to do the play at some point. And maybe this is just me trying to be a producer, which I don't know how to do. But was this immersive quality something that was interesting to if you like welcoming people to this space that can be very scary, but also it's kind of just like kind of cool?
Yeah, it was. Well, we did actually film the audience, and you got these intense scenes, and all of a sudden we cut to like a woman from Queens, and they're like, that doesn't work. Like, where the hell is this woman? I mean, it was funny to even see it. So we realized quickly, all right, we can never go to the audience in that. So that added to that immersive experience. But the garage, man, you talk about people hanging out. We're rehearsing, and there's a bunch of dudes in the back who just got done painting the car. They packed open a 12-pack Corona, and we're like, hey, we're gonna. And they're like, they're gonna move.
They're awesome. It was definitely an addition to what you. Yeah.
People were hanging out, man. There was no boundaries there. That was one of the most fantastic parts about it. Everybody's super nice, but there was none of that sacred actor space or
It wasn't. It was the opposite of a close set. It was really open, and it was great in that sense, because you had folks who've never seen the making of a film and never been to a play, most of them, and they were just in awe. They're like, I want to see what happens. And Mike and I had very little to no rehearsal time, So a lot of it was the technical aspect of it, of rigging lights and camera setup and all this kind of stuff, and prepping for the shoots because of scheduling conflicts and all. But teeth to the grind. We were able to I mean, how many days did we really have?
I mean, it was the lead actor, besides Julio, the mechanic, booked a big show the week of. So, which was great for him, and literally the first time we shot it was the first time they performed it. We maybe rehearsed twice before that, like this over Zoom, one time in the city for like 2 hours. I mean, it was a week prior. It was like they brought it on that very first performance. It was up and running. We did like, he flew in, we cued him and then shot it. That was it.
Which you see oftentimes on a film set is a lot of film sets, they have no rehearsal time. So the rehearsal is a luxury sometimes, and most times in film, but this is a play. But we were dealing with professionals, and we were able to just make it happen. And amongst all that, you have people on the outside with the beers and drinking and
oh yeah, they had dogs that lived
hanging out. It was the best. Pigeons, there was a ton of pigeons.
They're fucking New York pigeons, about like a baseball football. It just would plop down in the middle of a set, in the middle of the play, and then like that thing would not fucking move. Like you could try to kick it and like fuck you and just sit.
Oh my god. There was a nest. There was a nest over the performance. Like so the kind of the gate was right behind us, and right on top of the gate was a nest with some baby birds, some baby pigeons, and I don't know how they edited that out. I have no idea how they edited that out. But
we only had to stop to shoot one time where, because the garage door was open on the first scene. A guy rode by like one of those cars, base thing. He just stopped and just like started watching the play through the garage thing. He's like, right on. The only time we had to stop because like it just didn't work. He's just dude was just sitting there like watching the play through from the street through the garage door. So
it's
drive-in
theater,
right?
Drive-in theater. It definitely added to the experience for sure. We weren't we weren't deterred by it. It was just one of those things that it's we knew going in that we were prepared for that, and we were fortunate enough to have the manager of the shop, Luca, who's also a mentor of the youth. So we had youth come over, a lot of some of the kids gang affiliated and stuff like that, but part of our intention as well was to get the kids out of the street life and into the arts. So occasionally some of those kids will come around, and we just show them around real quick, and I felt like it was a collaborative effort. Like the community was a part of the crew, so we say that all jesting, and we had all this it was an active mechanic shop, so it was, for us, it was this incredible experience that cannot be duplicated in any way. And 5, 10, 15 years from now, it's like it'll live on in our minds as this amazing experience of a community collaborating to create film and theater, which is incredible.
Michael, I saw your bathroom series, which is a series of photographs you did literally in bathrooms. And after seeing that and having watched Repair, I'm like, this guy seems to have been ready for the pandemic and creating in confined spaces and like tiny places. So I was, this completely like blew my mind. Like, were you in any way prepared for the pandemic, I guess, since you know how to create in confinement? But for you as well, Julio, how did confinement and how did isolation and loneliness in so many ways change the way that you create and the way in which you approach your work in general?
Well, I'll go first, I guess. The pandemic, I mean, I've in Key West, you have to self-produce a lot. So the pandemic was a moment. Unfortunately, I have 2 small kids. And so when they were out of school, I love my daughter.
They're not gonna see this. It's fine. They're not gonna see this.
Unfortunately, I guess what I mean is we were all stuck. Houses in Key West are small, just like New York. So yeah, I will not say the pandemic was a super productive time for me creatively as I was hoping. So when I did able to have a studio here that I'm sitting in, when I was able to come over here, it's just creating an isolation. I don't find it difficult. I thrive in that. It's, just to have those quiet moments to do it. And also, being from here and with limited resources, you learn, like the bathroom series, you can make art anywhere. You can find everywhere. Every room has a story to tell, every location. You just really gotta let it speak to you and, let your own sensibilities and those 2 things come together, to create you in that space and tell a story.
100% agree. In my case, like Mike, I thrived in it. I kind of live in my own little world and go out and, make film and do theater and then come back in my little world. So it actually allowed me to write more. So I just did a ton of writing during the pandemic, and that included repair. So we did a lot of, tweaks, a lot of changes, and repair in that sense feels to me, and I mentioned it to Mike, feels like the pilot to an ongoing series of filmed plays, one location, and in the local community. So I geared my mind to writing like that, writing with small casts, confined space, and thinking about communities in which would be amazing to film, and bringing on which attaches that community with it. And so yes, for me, it wasn't too difficult, if I'm being honest. It was something that I kind of live in that world anyway. I'm not one to go out and all that kind of stuff, and I experience life, but mostly I like my little cave.
This is not the first time that you collaborated, as you said. So how did you 2 meet?
I had actually wrote a play called La Cura. It's about an uncle and his nephew in Key West, early 80s, when it was much more Spanish and Santeria and all of that. And a friend of mine teaches at LaGuardia Community College in Queens, and she recommended Julio for the role. So they did a read up there, and I went up there for it. That's how I met Julio. And then we did the full play in Key West. About 6 or 7 months later, Julio was in it, and then we've done a few other places since then, but that kind of kicked off our relationship. And he's done a couple other plays, a bunch of short films we've done, he's been in. So, we always like working together.
He put a ring on it. Yeah, we hit it off pretty seamlessly. I'd say it was. It was in the writing. I'm like, this guy's an incredible writer. I need to meet him. And then from then on, everything I've read from Mike since then, it's incredible. You've seen his photography work, and he's winning awards in Cuba and stuff. And I'm, as an admirer, it was more of my good fortune of like, yes, my friend is really talented.
No, I went both ways. Julio's an incredible actor. That's so yeah, we always try to write something for him and try to find ways that we could continue collaborating.
You better, after all those compliments I gave you.
Yeah.
And you are about to give him more compliments. And this is the part where you can pretend you're not in the room if you want, or you can leave the room if you want. Because I'm curious, for you, Julio, what makes Michael the ideal collaborator? And for you, Michael, what makes Julio the ideal collaborator? Like, why do you want to keep working together?
Well, I would say, for me with Julio is that he's fearless. As a performer, he will tackle anything. He will go to any lengths. You know, we filmed a lot of crazy shit at different times, and you just ask him to do it and he'll do it. He will try anything for the character, anything for the piece. You know, if I was like, hey man, we're gonna do a play in Cuba, you gotta sleep on the floor for 2 months. And he'd be like, great, fine, bring it on, man, let's go. So he is truly fearless, and he dives deep. He cares, and he's all about the work first, which a lot of times you don't find people like that. It's always about the work in lieu of anything else.
Mike is okay, I guess. No, I think we have the same sentiment towards storytelling. I strongly believe, you know, Mike and I, we have the same sensibility. We're truth tellers. We just like to just be honest as we can. We don't filter ourselves. We write and we perform in the same intensity, I'd say. You know, we trust is truth, and I mean, we believe in one another. I'd say that, you know, there's been situations on set and during plays where we're on deadlines, and it's one of those things where, in my case, I can, there's a monologue missing. You know, there's like Mike is rewriting a monologue. Mike is one of those who'll come back. He rewrites a monologue 2 days before something, but you're like, you know, it's gonna be great, but it's 3 pages long, and you're like, you know, if he can do the work, so can I. You know, so it's a beautiful relationship, and it's built like any great relationship off trust and a deep understanding that I don't want to say catalog, but we live in this finite time and space, and we are trying to do the best work that we can, and we want to be proud of it. So Mike is definitely cut from that same cloth of truth, of belief, and of finite. And he drinks bourbon, so that's
always important.
You mentioned pride, Julio, and there's something that I'm sorry if I'm being presumptuous, but I can't think of a better word than love, and what you have done with Repair, because you're bringing theater to, I'm thinking about your abuelos and tías and tíos and all the primos and primas and parientes in Cuba and the Dominican Republic, who can, travel, or who won't get the chance to travel to see all of your work on stage, but then you get to bring theater to them. So how has it been to have maybe family members and friends that live far, far away see your work for the first time? How have they reacted to it, and how has that made you feel?
Funny enough, we had a screening in New York. We screened it at Stewart Cinema, which is the first and only BIPOC cinema in New York. And the first show was completely sold out. And we had people from the community show up, and the cast and crew. And with overwhelming support, so much so that we had to add a second date on Sunday, which was more packed than the first day. And the second day was people from that neighborhood, from Corona, Queens. And I have to say, it was such a, oh man, like when you asked the question, I got a little choked up here, because the people really define, they don't define the work you do, but they really solidify your intention. You know what you mean, but you don't know how it's going to be received. So hearing and receiving all the love from Repair by the community was everything for me, because my fiance, she kept sending me pictures and sending me messages, and everybody was sending me messages of love and how much they enjoyed it. And um, I had a buddy call me, say that he had to leave the theater to cry to come back in. Because again, he's from, he's from the hood, and he didn't want to be seen crying in front of his friends. So he's like, hold on, he's like holding it in. He cries, he comes back, and it was such a beautiful thing. And it's one of those things that this is why you do it, and I will continue on that path to packing out those theaters with people that love, support, and that it touches. We hope that our cast and crew was built on that. Everyone who was a part of the cast, at least, 80% are from New York, born and raised, and I can talk all day about it, but it was just something that I'll cherish forever. I have so much pride for New York and for Queens in particular. I'm a Queens dude through and through, for sure.
Yeah. It's been fantastic. It's especially since with theater, a lot of people don't get a chance to see a lot of my theater because I've done it in Key West. I've done a few smaller things in New York, one in Cuba. So it's nice to be able to be like, check this out. And then they can see, and a lot of times they're like, I need a drink afterwards. That's kind of the consensus of this. We did one screening in Key West. We had it was decent size. We had about 150 people for the organization that put it together, but totally different audience than what Julio got to experience. This was more the Key West audience, snowbirds, supporters of the arts. So that was great. The composer came in town for it. So most of the people afterwards were a little like, okay, I'm gonna go get a drink. It definitely pulls that out of you. It's a lot of tears. So yeah, it's been a phenomenal experience, and having it available for people to watch has been such a bonus. Because part of the magic of theater, I guess, and part of the melancholy of theater is that it's only up on its own. It's just those moments, and when the play comes down, that's it. It's evaporated, and it's just living on with the people who got to experience it. And that's part of the reason I like theater so much. But at times, it can be heartbreaking in its own way. So it's kind of nice with this that there are just records, and now Repair lives, at least in this form. We have this record of it that people can experience.
Oh, I haven't told you, Mike. My mom saw it, and my mom was mad. So she goes, she said, you should have put me in it. And like the mechanic shouldn't have done what he did. And if I was there, and like she wanted lines, and she was really like, she was really into it. She did the most Dominican thing. She's like, I would have told him, I would have gave him a piece of my mind, and I would have, like, she was one chancleta away from justice. But yeah, it was, I've never heard my mom speak like that before. She was really upset.
I'm almost used to it by now. Like half the shit I do, she looks at it. Where did that? Why? Like what part of me raising you led to do half of this stuff? Unicorn. So.
Yeah. She's used to.
One down like a no.
Here he goes again.
Oh, there he goes again. What am I gonna have to deal with? What am I gonna have to explain to my friends this time?
Oh boy. No, it was the first time my mom had seen me on film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most of my friends and family as well. I typically try to, stay away from that kind of, because the critique, you can't. It's heartbreaking if there's any. But my mom and everyone came back like, like defending me. I'm like, that's not me. What do you? It was pretty awesome.
It just spun them up, like just.
Yo, I should have done this. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yo, you should have. I'm like, you don't keep a knife on you? I'm like, bro, what are you? Next time.
So,
It sounds to me like it's about time for you to have Michael's mom and Julio's mom do like a Thelma and Louise kick-ass like buddy movie. Okay, so after people go to the liquor store and get their bourbon, where can they check out Repair, and for how long is it going to be available to stream?
it's up for another 2 months at tskw.org. And that's the studios at Key West, and they have a streaming service called StudioWorks. So if you go to tskw.org, you'll see right on the navigation bar StudioWorks, and it's a series of 4 plays that were filmed over the past, I would say, year and a half, you know, kind of the pandemic years. And there's some other great options in there. You know, I think it's $10 per stream, or $40. You can buy the whole package of all 4 films, of all 4 plays, and it's a great way to
35.
35, sorry. Buy all 4 of them, you get a small discount. So yeah, tskw.org. And then after that, you know, we'll be doing the festival circuit. You know, we're starting to apply to film festivals now. So we'll know more about that within a few months. But ultimately, like I said, you know, Repair is a play, and, you know, Julio and I's ultimate goal is to try to get this produced for live theater. You know, I would love to see this live and experience in a traditional theatrical setting.
Thank you so much, guys, and felicidades for Repair. I thought it was really beautiful. So best of luck with everything else you're doing.
Thank you so
Muchas gracias, amigo.